Live, and we just went live, and I'm drinking Blueberry Hill Lager, yay.
Sam Adams.
Sam Adams, perfect. Sam Adams, perfect, absolutely perfect idea for this episode of Dylan Knows. Hello, everybody out there. This is Dylan Lang here with newest episode of Dylan Knows Lists. I'm not going to do my big spiel because we've got a big list that I really want to jump into real quick, but I will introduce my wonderful co-host for the day and every list show. This is Miss Geri Fletcher. Hey, Geri.
Hello. How is everybody doing? How are you
Good.
doing, Dylan?
We're doing good. It's
Mhm.
hot and sticky mess here today, but hopefully it'll get a little cooler soon. And I'll be going on vacation in 13 days, so yay!
Excellent.
Cannot wait for that. Should be a lot of fun. So, um, what for those who don't know, real quick, this is my weekly YouTube show. Different genre every week, different co-hosts every week, and different topics every week. This week is my list show where Geri and I we go down and we come up with a topic and then we decide on how many numbers we want. We've done a 6 list, we've done a 10 list, we've done a 5 list, So this one is 11, and the reason why I made it go to 11 is because while doing research for the show, which I actually did, for those who've watched the show, know that my research is all in here, and usually it's missing a lot of bits and pieces in it. So I was like, you know what, not this time. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to do the research. So I spent all last night, since I was bored, doing research, and I'm sitting there, and I'm doing my research, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, bam, like that, I was like, damn, there's another movie I want to put on the list. I just literally remembered it. So I went to Geri and I said, hey, can we do 11? She's like, yeah, it's cool. So we're going to do 11, and we're going to try to get this in the tight time frame. So we'll see. Because Geri wants to go to the pool. So here we go, Geri. And also, real quick before we go, we do have the Q&A up. So if you guys want to drop, I forgot to tell you what the whole theme's about. This is the top 11 government-themed, patriotic-esque type of films. So films that have some sort of bearing on government policy, patrioticness. It was a great, wonderful idea of Geri's because it is July. July 4th was last weekend. And so it's a perfect time to cover this. There's a lot of really good political type films out there, and we're going to go over some of them. Some are good, some are bad, meaning how the government is portrayed. Some are good, the government's portrayed as good. Some are bad. So, and that's just how the government really is for the most part, to be honest. So, without further ado, Q&A. Send us your favorite government-themed movies if you want, or on Twitter, just put my name at Holodill and hashtag Dylan Knows, and I'll see if I can get some on. I've already got a couple that I'll get to near the end of the show. So without further ado, Geri, you're number 11.
Okay, so my number 11 is a little bit out there. It takes place during World War II, and it actually focuses on the women of our country. And the movie is called A League of Our Own, or A League of Their Own, from 1992. So basically, World War II happens. Most of the men are out to war, so the women are left to deal with the jobs and this and that. And baseball, Major League Baseball, they were thinking about it, and they're like, should we just not have baseball while the men are gone? And somebody said, hey, let's brainstorm, put a league of women players together. It'll be entertaining. It'll be great for morale. And and we'll make some money too while we're at it. So I just really like that concept. I know it's not really hardcore government, but it does have to do with our country and the morale of the country at the time. And the story takes place. It's just about the women, their lives, their lives without their men, playing baseball. Great cast: Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell, and of course the very, very famous line, there's no crying in baseball. So I just feel like that movie is very iconic, very Americana. So I chose that as my number 11.
It's a good pick, absolutely, and also directed by Penny Marshall, who was a female also. So it's from a good perspective. It works for me because it is kind of the war is a overreaching part of the movie. I mean, it might not be shown on screen, but you hear how the people how the women react to getting the news that maybe their husband has died, or their husband's been injured, or he's coming back, or whatever. And we learn, we learn why Tom Hanks is not on the front lines fighting because of his feet. I think he had bad feet or something like that. He hurt
And he
himself
also
in one of
became
his
an alcoholic. He was,
alcohol. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and that was actually, to be honest, I think that movie was the one that sort of brought Tom Hanks's renaissance back, because he had been floundering for a while since he did Big with Penny Marshall. He hit a couple of slumps and some bombs, stuff like that. And this is more of a supporting role. Hanks is there, but he's not front and center in the film. He's in the back there. He's supporting the women. He's in there. It's the women's movie. And that, I believe, sent him on the path that we know him now, because next up came Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, and we all know the history after that. But baseball is such a part of Americana, and to have it such a well-done period piece, I like it as being part of this government-themed, patriotic type of style that we're looking at, because this idea we had was just, it's loosely interpreted. And it actually fits because it is a very patriotic film. Excellent film. Good number 11. My number 11 is also a comedy as well, but yours has a modicum of drama in this. Mine doesn't. Mine is a pure slapstick comedy. Movie is Spies Like Us. The government theme of that is Cold War spying. So 1985 film comes out. It's not, if it's a film you go and watch now, it hasn't dated well, because it is such a snapshot of a specific time in our history where the Russians are our enemies. We are sending spies over there. There's fears of nuclear warfare, stuff like that. President Reagan is still President Reagan, But what you've got is basically as an homage to the Bob Hope and Bing Crosby road movies of the 40s and 50s, where they went off on all these adventures and did song and dance stuff and went to all their different worlds and experienced different cultures and stuff like that. Basically, you got that, but you've got Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd and the roles of Hope and Crosby. Chevy Chase is Emmett Fitzhume. He's a guy who is a pure loser who got his job due to his father's connections. It's an easy job. He doesn't take it seriously, but it's a high-ranking government job. Dan Aykroyd, meanwhile, works as a code breaker in the basement where he has to do the dirty work of his superiors. He doesn't like it, but he has no way of getting out except for this government test that they give. I guess it seems to be more of an annual tradition, because he talks about taking it before and failing, so like that. But it's a way, if you pass this test, you get government service, and he's going to be able to move out of his job. But his superiors are trying to keep him down because he's one of the best code breakers, and he doesn't want him to become his superior. So he's keeping him down. So the two of them decide to take this test, and Chevy Chase, of course, thought he was going to skate by sleeping with the teacher, one of the people who was giving the who writes the test. She was going to give him the answers. She says no, so he goes in, comes up with some cockamamie excuse. He comes in all arm broken and eye patches and stuff like that, and he's got all of his, he's all these crib sheets there, so he pulls them out to pass the test. And Dan Aykroyd sees this happen and eventually decides, what, this guy is useless, so let me just help him out. So they're caught spying on this exam. And the government, meanwhile, has a plan to send a couple of spies over to Russia to investigate a nuclear missile. And they think, what would be good if we sent decoys? So they send Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase as decoys, and send them into the Russians' hands, basically, so that while the Russians are focusing on those two, the real spies can go in and do the job. However, there's more to the story than that. I'm not going to ruin it, but basically it is a pure slapstick comedy. It's amazing. It's freaking hilarious, and filmed in Washington, D.C., so there's lots of scenes of the government. They both work for the government, and the Cold War was a huge deal back then. So my number 11 is Spies Like Us.
It makes me giggle because I don't know if you ever saw the Family Guy episode where they had Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase on as the Spy Like Us characters.
No, I haven't seen that.
And their code word to I guess activate who the Russian spy is, like the Russian spy is brainwashed, and there's a code phrase that once it's said, then the plan goes into effect. And the code was, "Boy, that Italian family at the table next to us sure is quiet," and it just makes me laughs. When you started talking about that, I just kept hearing that over and over again. Sorry, that had nothing to do.
No, that's fine. No, it's funny because you are Italian and I'm not, so I don't.
Right.
So that's the joke, really, because not apparently not at all. So, but that's one of my absolute favorite lines in that. I'm gonna get a little red, a little blue here, but this is one of my favorite lines in the whole movie. They're at a stop before they cross the Russian border, and Dan Aykroyd is watching a marionette show. And meanwhile, Chevy Chase is trying to hit on this one doctor who they discover is one of the spies. They discover eventually that they're decoy spies and that this woman is one of the spies and that is the good one. So they try to connect with them. But Chevy Chase, being Chevy Chase, he's a horn dog. So he goes over there to try to score with her, and she like slaps him in the face and makes fun of him. So he just comes over and says, Chevy's like, I don't know what's wrong with her, and then we should probably follow her because she knows where she's going. And Dan Aykroyd's like, you want to follow her? You're thinking with your dick. And I just think it's one of the funniest lines ever. And then Chevy Chase is like, no, well maybe they're heading in the direction of the border. Maybe we need to follow them. Maybe that's exactly where they need to go. And Dan Aykroyd's like, yeah, they probably are. He said, maybe your dick's not so dumb. And here's the ringer. And then Chevy Chase goes, got me through high school. It's just one of the funniest little interplays between the two of them. It is such a great film.
Okay.
Number 10. Number 10.
Okay, right now we just my number 10 is a little bit out there. It's from 2004, and it's puppet animation. And the movie is, so you know it already, Team America World Police.
I see why you were chuckling because I said marionettes.
Yeah. So everybody knows this movie, but a quick rundown. International police force that maintains global stability. The dictator Kim Jong-un wants to destroy the world, so they recruit the Broadway star. His name is Geri Johnson to go undercover, and he somehow manages to sneak into an arms dealer's hideout and uncover the plan to destroy the world. So, turns out Kim Jong joins a group of actors and actresses who want to use the weapons of mass destruction to control the world. And it was just like a cool, clever, very clever movie. Great songs. Crude, funny, but lots and lots and lots of American spirit. So somehow I had to worm that one onto my list.
That was on my backups. That didn't quite make the top 10, but it was on there when I made my list. As I said, I told you before the show I'd had like 20 of them. It was on there. It was totally on there because it is one of those films that it's very pro-America, gung-ho America. I mean, I'm going to get blue again. The best song in the whole movie is America, fuck yeah. So it's just one of the best songs that you've ever heard. And it is, and say whatever you want about South Park and all that, but Matt Stone and Trey Parker are certifiable geniuses. Mm-hmm. They not only made South Park, which is an amazing satirical cartoon that is still going on, and is still as clever as it was. I think it might have lost a little bit lately because they're sort of rehashing a lot of stuff. But it was still, for its time, it's been on over 10 years now. I think it's been 10, 20, it's almost 15 years since it's been out. So you've got that, and then you've got their other movies. I mean, you've got Team America, but they also made a movie called Orgasmo, which is about a Mormon who becomes a porn star. And for a movie with that sort of pedigree, there's not a lot of sex in it. And it's one of the funniest movies you've ever seen. And then what do? They say, hey, let's go to Broadway. And they make the Book of Mormon, which is absolutely one of the funniest musicals you will ever see in your entire life. It is clever, and Team America was just the cream of the crop, using puppets to make fun of Michael Bay films and these action films of the 80s and 90s where America rules, stuff like that. And it follows the similar cliche while being very dirty and very stuff. It is hilarious, absolutely funny, and yes, it was on my backup list. If we were doing the top 20, it would be in that list. So cool. That's another excellent choice. My number 10 is the movie Dick from 1999. Oh, yeah. It's the first of two films that focus on Watergate. You can probably figure out what the other one is, Jerry. But this one takes a more comedic look at the Watergate scandal, and the government theme of that is, of course, government's abuse of power. But what's great about this comedy is it stars two teenage girls, Michelle Williams and Kristen Dunst, who are just typical flighty blonde-haired girls who all they care about is clothes and makeup and being popular and stuff like that. Where Michelle Williams is the smart one, but she wants to break out and be the popular one, and they somehow are able to finagle a job to become President Nixon's dog walker. And while they're there, Michelle Williams' character, Arlene, she falls in love with Richard Nixon. and one of the funniest things is the 18.5-minute taping of the Oval Office that is one of the cornerstones of the Watergate scandal, where it's been erased. We find out is actually Michelle Williams' character is Arlene singing a love song to Richard Nixon, which is hilarious. But they stumble upon that he's doing something illegal, and they don't know where else to turn, so they decide to call these two reporters, Woodward and Bernstein. Woodward, let me see, double check that. Woodward is played by your boy, Will Ferrell. And Bernstein is played by former Kids in the Hauler, Bruce McCullough. And both of them are absolutely brilliant in this film as well. And basically, it takes a different look at the Watergate scandal from the viewpoint of two teenage girls who end up being Deep Throat. They're the ones who are Deep Throat. And how they came up with that name, you can pretty much figure out, because at that time there was a porno called Deep Throat, and I think Kirsten Dunst's brother was watching it, and they caught him watching it, and then they decided to use that as their secret name when they're talking to Woodward and Bernstein. But it's a great fun film. Shows the government abuse of power, but in more of a comedic way. You've got a bunch of really good comedic actors in it. Harry Shearer, Dave Foley, Ted McGinley, Jim Brewer. They're all in it as well, playing historical figures. Of course, Will Ferrell, Bruce McCullough in it. Terry Garr is in it, for crying out loud. Yeah, and a very young, and I just found this out. I haven't seen it in a while. But when I was doing my research, I discovered Ryan Reynolds is in this also.
Oh, get out of here.
He must have been
really young.
Yeah, he was the son of Dave Foley's historical character Haldeman, and he's the one that Kirsten Dunst pretends to have an interest in and starts flirting with him, while Michelle Williams as Arlene goes into Haldeman's house to find some proof of wrongdoing. So
wow.
It's a fun film. It's silly. It is absolutely silly. It was directed by Andrew Fleming, who directed the phenomenal The Freshman with Matthew Broderick and Marlon Brando, which is amazing. So great fun film, and a different look at the Watergate scandal.
Right. Cool. I like that one. Okay, my number 9 is a more emotional one, and it was from 1994. And again, it's Tom Hanks. And this one, not so much, well, I'll just say it's Forrest Gump. And the reason why I picked that is because as he's telling his story and his life, he's basically on the bench telling the woman about his life. It's a 20-year span, 50s to the 70s, but it's running parallel with all these major events that are going on in American history, the events and the people that he runs into. So like Elvis and JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon. Then he ends up, being in the Vietnam War, where he meets Lieutenant Dan. And the reason why I picked that is because, he's just a very good-hearted, goes for it, Americana type character. He's in the heart of all this American history and situations. And I just like the way, the story is told, but you're also seeing all these events in American history unfold. And obviously we know the story. He's a slow guy, but he's very athletically gifted. He becomes friends as a child. His only friend is Jenny, and just his life and how he loses her, finds her, just always pines for her, just always wants Jenny, all the way up to the very end. And not that I won't give it away, but I think most of us know how it ends. It's a very sad but heartwarming story. But I definitely wanted to put that in the list because of all of the American events that are, shown in it.
Once again, in my top 20, if we would have done 20, it would have been in there also. It is another brilliant pick because it is it's basically spanning American history from the 50s through the 70s. You
Mhm.
see all these different things going on, and Forrest just happens to be involved in some way or another to be with it. Like when Alabama, the University of Alabama becomes the first school to allow black students to come in, he
Right.
happens to be going to the University of Alabama, so he happens to be there for that. And then, he goes to Vietnam, which is a big thing that's going on at that time. Gets injured, saving the day, saving his platoon. Then becomes a hero, and then ends up going to China, where he plays ping pong, which is another actual event that does happen. I mean, it is a real historical event that did happen. And yeah, he meets all these presidents. He meets JFK, he meets Lyndon Johnson, he meets Richard Nixon, and and you also intersperse all these things with the dark side of America, with the assassinations of both Kennedys, Martin Luther King Jr., and the attempted assassination of Gerald Ford. You get a little bit of into Watergate, so you actually span and you even get into the beginnings of the AIDS crisis as well.
Right.
So you get, you get this span. And what I always think is that Forrest Gump is the height of America. He's the American ideal. He's the one that he's the one who believes everything is great, everything is wonderful because he doesn't know any better. But he just acts that way because that's how he was raised. Is that everything is fine. There's good people in the world. And he might not understand everything that's going on, but he knows. Just be a nice person. Why should you be bad? Why should you should be mean? There's no reason to be mean. Meanwhile, Jenny is going through the opposite of her. She is the dark side of America. She gets involved in stripping. She gets involved in drugs. She gets involved and just the dark side of American culture at that time, and you get that wonderful yin and yang between them. So yeah, it is an absolutely wonderful film, wonderful American film to watch. It makes you feel good about America and gives you a look at American history through the eyes of someone who is not like you, who's not your normal person, and it is wondrous. And I'm just going to say this real quick. One of my absolute favorite scenes ever filmed is in that movie, and it's at the end where you might not want to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it. Forrest has married Jenny, and they're living in his house that his mom owned, and she has contracted AIDS, and she's dying. So she's sleeping a lot, and Forrest is coming in, and he's tending to her and taking care of her. And they have such a sweet conversation about how Jenny is finally becoming the bright light of the American ideal, and it just takes her potentially passing on to get through the dark, and now she's entering the light. Mm-hmm. So she wants to say, "I wish I was with you during all your amazing adventures." And then Forrest just starts this little monologue where it cuts to all these different scenes that he's been in and just shows the absolute gorgeousness of the American countryside. I mean, there's with the wonderful score by Alan Silvestri playing in the background. He's talking about all the sparkles on the water when he's on the water. When he's running through the desert. In the morning sun's coming up. He can't tell where heaven ends and the land begins. The mountain lake that's so clear. Stuff like that. And that distinct Forrest Gump accent and that music in the background by Alan Silvestri. It just nails that scene and is one of my absolute favorite scenes ever put on film. So yes, it is a brilliant film. My number 9 might seem a little odd because it's taking a look at the government in a dark way, and it's the Pelican Brief.
Oh yeah.
The government theme about that is that the government will resort to murder to get what they want. Now, for those who don't know, Pelican Brief was a novel written by John Grisham, one of his early ones actually. I read both the novel and I've seen the movie. And to be honest, I actually like the movie better because I talked about this, I think, last week with MJ, or it could have been a few weeks ago, I don't remember. But one of the things I always hate about movies where they have a male and female working together is that they always need to somehow force them into a relationship.
Yeah.
Now, Grisham did that in the book, the Pelican Brief, where the main character, Darby Shaw, who is a young hotshot law student, is in trouble, and I'll get into why in a few seconds. And she has to tell her story to a newspaper reporter named Gray Grantham, and the two of them start a relationship during the book. Now, once again, as I said, there's a place for those types of stories, but I like to sometimes see a story where a man and a woman work together without the ever problem of there being a romantic relationship being involved. So I think when Alan J. Pakula, who wrote and directed this film in 1993, when he made the film, he said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try something different." So he cast Julia Roberts as Darby Shaw, who at that time was young; she was in her 20s, and then cast an older guy as her contact at the newspaper, played by Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
And the two of them, their relationship is more of a a work friend relationship. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's 1993, they didn't want to show an interracial relationship. Okay, I can get that maybe.
Yeah.
But the story that Pakula was trying to tell, while it was based on the novel and it uses probably about 90% of the novel in that story, he wanted to try something different and have Denzel's Greg Grantham more as maybe not mentor, but more of a protector for her, and not someone that they could have a romantic relationship with. And I like that. This is one of those films, whatever you may think about Julia Roberts, this showed, she was still kind of young around this time. I think Pretty Woman came out in '91, so she was starting to just continue on her rise to glory. And a lot of people, were kind of doubting her acting ability. She was actually really good in this film. And the basic premise is two Supreme Court justices get assassinated on the same night. And no one can find a connection between the two because there really is no connection between any of the things they've been discussing with the court or anything in their personal lives or whatever. One is a really, really old guy and one is a younger guy. So they don't know exactly what the connection is. Well, Darby Shaw, she knows a lot about this story because the older Supreme Court justice who was killed was the mentor of her current boyfriend, her teacher, played by Sam Shepard. And he's all depressed now because his mentor's been killed and assassinated of all ways, and so he's trying to figure out how this could happen, doesn't understand why it could happen. And so for some reason Darby decides, you know what, let me do some research just to maybe I can figure out something to maybe help my boyfriend feel better, So she discovers a link that nobody else saw between these two Supreme Court justices and writes a brief about it, gives it to her boyfriend. He likes it. He gives it to a friend of his in the FBI, and before you know it, her boyfriend gets killed.
Yep.
And now she's on the run because now she thinks, uh-oh, I might actually have figured out what's going on. Nobody else is able to figure out why this happened. So I'm in trouble. So she ends up, running to Washington to try to find the FBI agent friend of her boyfriend's. And along the way, she meets up with Greg Grantham, who's doing a story as well on the assassination as well. And he has a source who knows what's going on as well. So the two of them compare notes. Meanwhile, the government, the chief of staff, played by Tony Goldwyn, is the one who has declared the assassinations, was the one who said, we got to assassinate these two people, and now we got to kill this woman because she knows what we're doing, and we can't have this because I don't want my president to go down and in a conspiracy like this. So he has to clean up everything. So not a very smart man, but so he hires the same assassin that he had to kill the Supreme Court justice. Now, once again, it's all about big money. The main reason the Supreme Court justices were murdered is because there was an oil baron who wanted to take over drilling in the Louisiana swamp where pelicans are living, and I think they might be on the close to extinction or whatever, a special kind of pelican. And the two Supreme Court justices who were assassinated were trying to, I guess we're pushing to make that more of like a national preserve for the pelicans so that no oil can be done. But the government, the chief of staff's like, no, we need to, this guy gave us a lot of money. He's the one who pretty much got us hired, got us into the White House, so we got to bend to his will. So he's got to figure out a way, I get rid of these two guys, they won't be able to put out the pelican area, and I can drill the stuff. So it becomes then a cat and mouse chase through Washington D.C. While Julia Roberts and Denzel are being chased by the assassin and by the government officials trying to kill them and hunt them down. So a very taut, very cool thriller. Great acting by both Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, surrounded by great supporting cast: Sam Shepard, Tony Goldwyn, John Lithgow, Hugh Cronin, Stanley Tucci, John Hurd, William Atherton, who actually plays a good guy in this. He was the guy who played Peck in the Ghostbusters movie. He actually plays a good guy in this. So my number 9 is Pelican Brief.
And what's also cool about that too is that was a time like before cell phones and before internet, and just the way that they sort of have to find more creative ways of sneaking around and getting in touch with one another and meeting and rendezvousing too, because it wasn't just like, oh, let's throw a quick text out there, or let's bury the information on the internet somewhere. So it almost made things more difficult when you look back at the way we communicated 25 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, good points. Number 8.
My number 8 is about Maverick, Goose, and Iceman. And that is Top Gun from 1986, because that also has like a "Yay America" type feeling. Maverick and Goose end up, they're fighter pilots, and they end up going to the Miramar Naval Air Station for advanced training. I hadn't seen this movie in so long, I actually had to like really look it up. Maverick's this wild, cocky guy. He's good at what he does. He does have some skeletons in his closet in terms of like haunted by some things that have happened in his past, and they all are at the school and they want to win the Top Gun award. So of course they compete for it, and some stuff happens, and like I said, he's haunted about some stuff, so he ends up losing to Iceman. But then what happens in real life is there's this hostage situation in the Indian Ocean, and so him along with some of the other pilots have to go out there and actually, fight for real, protect the ship, protect the borders. And of course, Maverick ends up being the hero. Yay, he's awesome. Yay, America. So Top Gun is on my list.
Great cast. Great cast.
Yeah.
Great decision. It's another good one. And I might get crucified for this, but I despise Top Gun. I'm not a Top Gun fan. And I can't tell you why, because I've seen it maybe twice. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen it in probably, like you, maybe well, you might have seen it before I did, but I haven't seen it like in almost 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I don't know what it's about. Is it just the pure cockiness that, Tom Cruise's Maverick shows that makes me kind of hate his character? And we've had this discussion before where if there's a character that I don't like, I'm not going to like the movie. Yeah. But to be fair, though, it is well shot by Tony Scott. Rest his soul, unfortunately. He is a great director. Had his own personal demons, but very well shot by that. Tom Cruise playing his cocky best, probably one of the roles that he's best known for, maybe the role he's best known for. That and maybe Risky Business on top of that. Those might be the two he might be most known for. And maybe Jerry Maguire, if you want to throw that in there as well. So like those three, at least Top Gun is in there, is one of the ones in there. Val Kilmer playing the totally appropriately named Iceman. Great. Tom Skerritt, I think, is in there also. Anthony Edwards. Meg Ryan, young Meg Ryan, is in there also. Plays Anthony Edwards' wife. So I don't know. And maybe I didn't like the "You've Lost That Love and Feeling" scene in the bar. And
what do you mean you didn't like that?
And I mean, the Kelly McGillis and him. I don't know. I don't know what it is about the film. I just don't like it. But for this countdown, for this list, it is an appropriate. It's an appropriate film to be on the list. It really is. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it doesn't.
It sucks, Jerry. It sucks.
No, I would never say that. I personally, I don't like Top Gun, but that's just me. Yeah. So let all the Twitter people, Facebook people, Google Plus people say, Dylan, you are totally insane. But yeah, still a good choice. It is very pro-America, rah-rah. Great. But I mean, to be fair though, Tony Scott does shoot the hell out of that film. The air fight scenes. Michael Bay, who I absolutely despise, could learn a thing or two from Tony Scott about how he directs action. My number 8 is the one that had me frantically Facebooking you and Twittering you last night. It was the one that just popped in my head while I was doing my research. It's like, I got to put this in somewhere. And I had to rearrange the countdown a little bit. So my number 8 is Wag the Dog. Have you ever seen Wag the Dog, Jerry?
I don't know if I've seen it. I know Ken has seen it, and he rants and raves about it.
Yeah, De Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, directed by local boy Barry Levinson, who has been famous for a bunch of other great films as well.
Mhm.
But what I find, and before I get into why I like this film with the government theme about it, I have to be impressed. This film was shot in 30 days,
Oh
which
wow.
is almost unheard of in Hollywood. It was one of those things that Levinson was in between. I think he was in between Disclosure and another film he was doing, and he wanted to make this film, and if he wouldn't have made this film, he would have lost the rights to it or something like that. So he jumped in, got a bunch of his friends together, and made this film in 30 days. It's a government conspiracy film to lie to the public. That's the theme. Once again, the government is not being shown in a good light, but it is a comedy. It is a comedy, has a bit of drama in it as well, but the basic premise is 2 weeks before the election, the president, unnamed president, is involved in a sex scandal. He apparently was making advances on a underage girl. Like the Girl Scouts were at the White House for a meeting or whatever, and he was making unwanted sexual advances on a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, something like that. Of course, he denies it, but all the reporters are like saying, yeah, we have the girl saying this, and it's her against him, and something like that. So he's in the middle of a re-election race, and so 2 weeks before the election, this happens. So Robert De Niro's character, Conrad Breen, who is like a chief of staff type of guy, a fixer for the most part, he has to figure out a way to draw attention away from the sex scandal so that they can eke out a victory in 2 weeks, so that something else is going to take the public's eye for 2 weeks until the election. And what they decide to do is they decide to go to Hollywood and meet with one of the top producers in film history by the name of Stanley Motz, played by Dustin Hoffman's character, and hire him to create a fake war.
Oh, jeez.
So
okay, I haven't seen this.
this was filmed in 1997. So you've got sort of the advent of computer-generated stuff, and you got a little bit more leeway to do things. So Conrad and Motz get a group of people together who have all different powers. A musician played by Willie Nelson, a guy by the name of the Fad King who can create fads with the snap of his fingers, played by Dennis Leary, and they try to brainstorm how they're going to cover this war. And they can't have it be against like a Germany or a Russia or something like that, because people are going to find out immediately that this is not true. So they pull the country of Albania. They just go like, Albania's a small little country in the Crimean Sea or something like that. Right. We're going to war with them. And so Stanley Motz and Conrad Breen come up with this idea where they hire actors and they do computer-generated backgrounds, and they film like young girls trying to escape war. You hear sounds of gunfire and explosions, and you come up with all kinds of things. The president, his heart goes out to the Albanian people who are being mistreated by their horrible leader and stuff like that. And it kind of works because the Albanian prime minister can't say, no, there's nothing going on, because right now Albania appears to be a bad guy. And if he says, no, nothing's going on, the Americans will be like, that's lying. We know you are killing all these people. It's on TV. We have actual film of it. So they do that, and then they have Willie Nelson's musician create a song that will get people motivated, and they hide it in the National Archives so that it sounds like it's a song from the 40s. So that what is created now, the Fad King, played by Dennis Leary, creates an idea of like, why don't we have people throw their shoes up on telephone wires, because there is an American POW by the name of Schumann who is being held hostage by the terrorist Albanians. So here's old Shoe, and then the song is about Shoe. So they flock behind this Schumann character, who is an actual person played by Woody Harrelson, but it gets better. He's played by Woody Harrelson, but it gets better. The reason why he's known to the government is because Woody Harrelson's character of Schumann is actually in prison for trying to rape somebody.
Oh, good Lord!
So what they do is he's a mental guy, so you couldn't believe anything he says anyway. So they create a whole story about this POW, and they create him, cutting like a message in a sweater to his mother, and shows him being held hostage by these Albanians, all acting, all pictures. So everything's on TV, everything's on the computer. It has to be real, So this cannot be a lie. They even go and see James Belushi, who plays himself, who's Albanian by nature, and he's going along with, like, yeah, my heart goes out to the Albanians and stuff like that. So they create this whole thing to clear out, this sex scandal, and it works. And what's interesting about the film is that it came out in '97, right before the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
I was going to ask that, because when you started, describing it, I'm like, wait a second, that sounds familiar.
And then, and it looks like that they might have taken a page from their book, because during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, there was a bombing in Sudan of a pharmaceutical company that happened that took the public's eye off of the Lewinsky scandal a little bit. So it's just conspiracy, a way that taking a way at perception, the way that nowadays in the late '90s, close to the turn of the century, how everyone says if it's on TV or it's on the internet, it has to be real,
Right.
And the way technology is now, they could do this. Hell, if they wanted to, and we had this discussion a few months back when we did our conspiracy show, they could probably fake a Mars landing with all the technology they have now. So, but this was a great little film, made for very little money, shot in 30 days. And it's fantastic, and it's just a great cast. Besides everyone else in it, Anne Heche is in it, Andrea Martin, Susie Plaxton, Kirsten Dunst, who is in Dick. She plays a little minor role, and also William H. Macy, Craig T. Nelson. So,
wow, that is a great cast. Yeah, big cast.
Check it out. It's an interesting film.
I'm gonna have to.
Film. All right, you're number 7.
All right, compared to that, my number 7 is totally hokey. And it's been on lists in the past, too, for different reasons. And it came out in 1996. And it starts out on July 2nd, when a big, giant spacecraft hovers over the Earth. And it is Independence Day. And I kind of wavered whether to put it on or not. But the thing that got me about it was I was thinking about this movie, and I was thinking about the patriotism, and it actually cracked me up to think, like, it was really a Earth worldwide problem that was going on, because they were getting ready to destroy the whole globe. Yet it was the 2 Americans, the scientist and the pilot, that sort of saved the day. So in my mind, it was like this "Yay America" times 100, So I put it on for that reason, because it's like no other country, no other pilots or scientists could come up with this idea, and all it took was a drunk David, going and however he realized the force field in the Area 51 plane, and they put the soda can and shoot it, and it comes off, and it's so ridiculous. And I was like, I got to put this one on the list just because of the ridiculousness of it all.
It's actually interesting.
And I'm not going to tell this. I'm not going to say what it's about, because everybody knows.
But what's interesting about it, though, is you're absolutely right, because there is a scene right after they've come up with the idea about how to bring them down, and they're sending it over the telegraph, and so they're going around the world, and then they come to a part in the Middle East. So you've got some Middle Eastern people, and you've got some British people, and they're reading the telegraph, and they're like, "Oh, the Americans have an idea," and then the guy was like, "It's about bloody time." It's like, okay, all right, yeah, go America. We're the only ones who can solve this crime.
Not only that, like, the rest of the world was waiting for us to solve it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous when I thought about it.
Which is actually one of the reasons why Signs is such a great movie, which focuses on a alien invasion, but they're the people who come up with a way to defeat the aliens. That, like, they're, is the whole worldwide thing, that they don't like water, happened overseas. So it's just an interesting. Well, you got to look at I guess M. Night Shyamalan he is a foreigner, so he wanted to have his people be the heroes and stuff like that, which is understandable. But yeah, no, Independence Day is I think was on my top 20 list as well. One of those that didn't quite break the top 11, but it's very patriotic. It's very pro-government. Yahoo, we're the best. I mean, the President of the United States does his big speech, this is our Independence Day. He goes into the airplane and he flies. I mean, how much more can you do that? You've got the inner workings a little bit of the government, where you see, how they would interact to the possibility of an alien invasion, stuff like that.
Right.
So it's another good one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. My number 7 is the movie Speechless. Have you ever seen this one? Michael Keaton, Gina Davis?
Yeah,
No?
I think I have.
Well, the government theme for this one is it actually takes a look at the process of electing a senator to the government. So that's why I put it on my list, because it's a basic romantic comedy. Came out in 1994. Stars Michael Keaton and Gina Davis. They happen to play speechwriters who are in New Mexico for a primary in New Mexico, where they've got a Republican and a Democrat going against each other for this seat in the government, in the Senate, I believe. And Michael Keaton is the speechwriter for the Republican candidate. Gina Davis is the speechwriter for the Democratic candidate. So, of course, the two of them meet cute as they do in romantic comedies. Neither of them can sleep. They're both insomniacs. They meet in the hotel restaurant, and they flirt a little bit. And then they don't know who each other is yet. They don't know who they each are yet. So they just start flirting, and then they're near the border. So Michael Keaton's like, why don't we go to Mexico and get some breakfast burritos? So they drive in Gina Davis's rental car, in Michael Keaton's rental car. He drives down some really nice, like, Camaro or something like that, and they drive to the border, or just about the border, and he runs out of gas. So they're in the middle of the desert, and they just start talking, and they fall more and more in love, and then eventually they are able to get gas, and they're able to go back, and then they begin to start a relationship without knowing what the other one does. Gina Davis says she's a writer, but doesn't tell him. She tells him that she's a writer, but she makes it seem like she's a newspaper writer. And then Michael Keaton says that he's a sitcom writer, because that's what he was. He was a sitcom writer. He actually wrote for one of the most popular sitcoms. It's actually still on the air. He just doesn't write for them anymore. And he's decided to take this job as a speechwriter. So they're kind of lying to each other, and to that I really don't understand why they don't come right out and say it right away, but I guess you can't have a romantic comedy without that. So, of course...
Well, they have their problem, too.
Yeah. Luckily, early on in the film, they discover that they are working for the opposite parties and that they should be enemies. So after that happens, they begin to try to one-up themselves, even though they are still attracted to each other. And to add more insult to injury... Gina Davis's ex-husband is played by Christopher Reeve before his accident, which paralyzed him. So it's probably one of his last roles he did before he had his accident. And he's fantastic. He is. Everyone seems to forget how great of an actor Christopher Reeve actually was before his accident. I mean, what he did due to his accident and all the stuff that he did to build up, that was great for that. But before that, he had a whole other career as a great actor. He really was a good actor, and this just shows he's got some good comedy timing and stuff like that. So he plays the ex-husband of Gina Davis's character. He's a guy called Baghdad Bob. He's a guy that's gone over to Iraq and talked from there, and is a Studley type of reporter. And Michael Keaton is working for his ex-wife, who is running the Republican candidate's re-election or the election campaign, and she's played by Bonnie Bedelia, who is fantastic. Is the wife from the Die Hard movies. So you've got the exes are in there also, and their growing attraction to each other is building, but each of them are trying to outdo the other because they want their guy to win. So they pull some mean tricks on each other, but eventually love overcomes, and they end up together. But then, of course, as in all romantic comedies, another wall comes up, divides them again, and then you have to get back to them coming back together in the end. It is a romantic comedy. I'm not spoiling anything by saying yes, in the end they do get back together. But you got to go through the hills and valleys of a typical romantic comedy. But it shows a really interesting viewpoint of how election policies and politics are, and to take a look at how things run like that. So it's in that case, that's why I put it on this list as being a great government-themed film, because you actually see the process. And there's a lot of really funny comedy bits in there as well. There's an ongoing joke about a bear trapped in a cave, a baby bear trapped in a cave, which is the top story beating the election, So all both election parties are so pissed off because this bear trapped in a cave is the top story. So,
That's funny.
but Michael Keaton and Gina Davis, worked together in Beetlejuice, where they were sort of antagonistic toward each other. It's good to see them playing a romantic comedy because they actually play off of each other really well. They have really good chemistry together. They're both very cute, and Michael Keaton is Michael Keaton. He's such a great actor as well. But it also has our boy Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters. He's in it as well. He plays a great role in it as well. And it's just a great film in general. Now, I have another reason why I personally like this that made me kind of sad is that for those who don't know, I'm a big comic book guy. Michael Keaton played Batman in 2 movies. Christopher Reeve played Superman in 4 movies. You have one scene where Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton are playing off each other, and this comic book geek in me is like, I would have loved to see a World's Finest movie, which is Superman and Batman with these 2 guys in it because they had such good chemistry together. I would have loved to see this one scene is one of the best scenes in the film, and it makes my heart hurt a little bit. I know that sounds goofy, but it just shows the potential that could have been an awesome Superman-Batman film with Christopher Reeve playing off of Michael Keaton. And it would have been, I think, an amazing film because the 2 of them actually worked well off each other. It's a very good comedic scene between the 2 of them. And I think to put that in as the roles of Batman and Superman would have been a fantastic film. But Speechless, check it out. Typical romantic comedy. So don't go in expecting anything other than a romantic comedy because it is. But it's funny. There's a lot of funny parts in it. The interplay that they have where they're trying to one up each other is hilarious. And the bear storyline, that's an ongoing storyline, is actually one of the funniest bits in the whole film. So there's my number 7.
Cool. All right, my number 6 was filmed in 2004, but it takes place in 1980, and it is called Miracle. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's a true story of the 1980 U.S. ice hockey team. The coach was Herb Brooks at the time, and he was played by Kurt Russell. And basically, they were the underdogs. Our nation needed like a little bit of a boost, so it just became where they all started cheering them on as they played against the Soviets to win the 1980 Olympic medal. And the reason why I picked it is because it's a great film about hockey, a lot of camaraderie, and just that feeling of hope that it evoked for our country at a time when maybe, we were a little bit down. And, similar to Spies Like Us, where it was very like us versus the Russians. And so that's why I picked Miracle.
No, it's a great, great patriotic because it is one of the last times where you see America being together and all cheering for the same thing because the Cold War is going on. The Russians are the enemies. The Russians are huge professionals. They probably would have mopped the floor with everybody else. And the American team is just a bunch of college kids. No names. This is before they allowed actual National Hockey League players to play in the hockey games. So these are just kids, taking on the Russian juggernaut, and the fact that it became sort of a symbol for America's, beating the Russians in the Cold War, much how Rocky IV is as well, where you have the American Sylvester Stallone's Rocky beating up on the Russian Ivan Drago. Once again, America, fuck yeah, we kicked the Russians' ass. But the thing is, though, this story is true. And it was one of those times that it is one of those sports memories that everybody remembers. Well, I guess our age could be younger kids, maybe not so much. This movie helped out a little bit because it did come out in 2004, and it maybe got some of these kids who were interested in that to come back and to think about it. And it is the last time that I think the Olympics really had a huge moment because back in '84. I think there was one where we boycotted the Olympics or the Russians boycotted the American one, so there was that. So we didn't really have the chance to have another competition with the Russians because the Cold War was really escalating at that time. But great film, a great patriotic, very pro-America. Take a look at how great America is, but it's a true story, and it's not done in a way that we're better than the Russians. It's a underdog story. It's a story that everybody can get behind. So yeah, good story, good one.
Sorry.
When you said 2004, I almost like, oh man, we got the same one. But no, we don't. My number 6 is also came out in 2004. This one is National Treasure. The government theme on this one is the government as a historical wonder. This shows the government in a light that, the old days when America was first created. This is what we should be striving for. This is the reason why we are where we are today. For those who don't know, basic premise is Nicolas Cage plays Benjamin Gates, who has been brought up by tales from his grandfather, played by Christopher Plummer, about a hidden treasure somewhere in America that our founding fathers hid away from people. It includes, this ancient stuff that's been, taken, and discovered and stuff like that. Lots of jewels, lots of statues, lots of manuscripts, just lots of not just treasure in riches, but treasure in philosophy, treasure in historical significance and stuff like that. And so Benjamin Gates has been brought up by his grandfather about how great, stories about, this, treasure, and how there's all these clues everywhere. You need to follow the clues to find the treasure. So Benjamin Gates makes it his life work to find this treasure. So he's very smart, very bright, and he goes and does his best to try to find the treasure, but he can't do it alone. So he ends up teaming up with a guy who's kind of crooked, played by Sean Bean, who actually doesn't die in this, which is an amazing.
That's right. Ned Stark lives.
Yeah, exactly. He plays Ian, who is a guy who joins up with with Nicolas Cage's character. He's the financial backer because he's got a lot of money, and the only reason why he's doing this is he doesn't care about the historical significance. He just wants the jewels, the gold, and all that stuff, and he's going to take his cut of it, and he's going to become rich. So he and his crew, they discover a clue that leads them back to America up in the North Pole. And Ian's like, you know what? I don't want to share this with you. So he tries to kill Nicolas Cage and Nicolas Cage's partner, Riley Poole, played by Justin Bartha. And they escape, but then they realize that we have to. There's a clue on the United States Constitution, the actual one from 1776. It's on display in Washington, D.C. at Smithsonian. Declaration. I'm sorry. Yes, not the Constitution. I'm sorry. The Declaration. No, thank you for correcting me. It is a Declaration. So they have to figure out a way to steal the Declaration and find the clue that is on it. So it soon becomes, we've got to beat the bad guy to it, and unfortunately, Nicolas Cage runs across Dr. Abigail Chase, played by Diane Kruger, who is one of the curators of the museum, and she unwillingly gets kidnapped by Ian and his crew, and Nicolas Cage has to save her. Now she joins Ben and Riley on this trek to find the treasure. So it's just basically one big chase through American history, shot in Washington, shot in Washington, D.C., shot in Philadelphia, shot in New York City, major areas where historical significance happens. And it's a fun film. It's PG, I believe. I don't think it's PG-13. I think it's PG because, let's face it, there's not any sex in it. There is some slight language, but that's typical for a PG. And there is some violence, but nothing, not like guts splurting everywhere or people, getting shot and killed and tortured and stuff like that. No, it's just one big chase through American history, and it's a fun. It is. I could show it to my kids. I think I'd be okay with showing it to my kids. From what I recall, there really isn't anything too bad about it. So it's a fun little film that takes you through the American history, and I love it because I graduated college with a BA in American history, or rather in history in general. So it interested me in that aspect of it, and just a great cast. Besides that, we've got John. Besides everyone I said before, we have Harvey Keitel, John Voight are in it as well. So just a fantastic cast, great directed, good story, and what's really cool about it is the first time I ever saw it, I was working at the Philadelphia Comic-Con, and I happened to see it in my hotel room that night. So I was actually in Philadelphia where they filmed a lot of the film, watching this film in Philadelphia. So it was kind of neat. So that's my number 6, National Treasure.
Absolutely. It's funny because if we hadn't had 11 movies, then we would have come in dead tie because my number 5 was National Treasure.
Ah.
And what I love about it is just that it was a very interesting and engaging way of sort of teaching American history, because it sort of taught you as they went through their little scavenger hunt and had to find each clue and one thing leading to another. And my kids did actually see it, and it kept them, interested, and they really liked it. Some things were over their heads, but for the most part, just the whole story of getting from point A to B to C and then finally finding the treasure was just really fun for them. I also like that sort of it was like a throwback to like Indiana Jones movies, and I think that's what appealed most to me about it. He's like fun, he's quirky, he's not perfect, he makes a ton of mistakes, yet at the end he ends up, being the hero and getting the job done, just like Indiana Jones.
Exactly. That is
Yeah.
a great way to look at it, because it's a fun film. It is absolutely fun film, and he's a normal guy, and
Right.
it's just yeah. I mean, it's such a great film, and I love it. I haven't seen the sequel yet, so I still, that's on my list. I'm not sure if they can really replicate what they did from the first film, but it's on my list. I'll see it eventually. My number 5 is for some reason I have I love romantic comedies. They're good comfort food. They're nice comfort food. My number 5 is The American President. This came out in 1995. This government theme is that the president is a regular person like you and I. Sometimes a lot of people forget that the president, before he was president, was a regular person like you and I. Family, had issues. She wanted to become president, so they followed the path they needed to. They worked in the government first, and then they got elected, stuff like that. But up to that point, they were a normal person. The president is a normal person. A lot of people forget that that is the case. Sometimes, they're a little bit bigger. Like President Reagan was a film actor, so you've got that. President Bush the first was the head of the CIA. So they're just stuff like that. But The American President, directed by Rob Reiner, who's a great director in his own right, written by Aaron Sorkin, who a lot of people, their view of government is from Aaron Sorkin's TV show The West Wing, which I think he sort of came up with after he wrote this film. He decided he wanted to make a TV show though about life in the White House, and so he created The West Wing. He used some of the same same actors rather, with different names in The West Wing. So 1995 it came out. Stars Michael Douglas as President Andrew Shepard. He's a widower. He's got a young teenage daughter, like 13 years old, so she just barely turned teenage daughter. So he's widowed. His wife was love of his life, and she died, I forget, of cancer or something like that, but she died of a disease. And a lot of people believe that that's how he became president, not because of his beliefs and his they believe that they felt sorry for him because his wife died during the campaign, and they felt sorry for him, so they elected him that way. Turns out he's actually a pretty good politician. He's a pretty good president. And so one day, he's getting close to. He's got a lot on his mind. His daughter's growing up. He's beginning to think that his daughter probably needs some sort of mother figure in her life because he's so busy running the free world that he really can't be a dad. He tries to spend time with his daughter, but the life of a president is not easy if you have kids. As we've heard lots of stories from the president's kids when they were in the White House with them, some of the issues they've had. So he's got to figure out, I got to find a mother figure for her. I also have to start thinking about running for re-election, and people are telling him that, some people believe that you won due to the death of your wife. Now you've got to stand on your record, and you've got to prove to these people that your presidency is not a quirk and stuff like that. And so Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Senator Bob Rumson, he's the guy who's going to become his competitor, and so we focus on what he's going to try to do to, try to burn President Andrew Shepard so that he can become president. And so during a regular day, President Shepard runs into Sidney Ellen Wade, played by Annette Bening, who is a lobbyist for environmental issues, I think. And he is immediately smitten with her. And it's like love at first sight, and she's like, talking to him down there, like, your environmental policies are a joke, and meanwhile he's trying to flirt with her and try to get her number and stuff like that. And so eventually he is able to ask her out on a date to a state dinner, and slowly the two of them fall in love during this time, and he starts dating Sydney Ellen Wade. Now, once again, this throws everything into turmoil because a she's a lobbyist, so of course in this in the CNNs and reporters stuff like that, she's a lobbyist in the White House trying to is has starting to have a influence on the president
Right.
because he's infatuated with her. That ain't right. That's what their opinion is. Like you shouldn't be dating anybody while you're president, especially somebody who's a lobbyist. But then you got to think about the president is a regular person. He's got wants and needs also. You can't just shut down an emotional side of yourself. So he's fighting against that. But of course, Bob Rumson comes in and starts throwing mud, saying, this digs up mud on Sydney like she was a draft dodger or burned her bra, and stuff like that. So she's a bad influence. And also, she's been spending the night in the White House, obviously having sex with the president while the daughter is right down the hall. Oh my God, American values. Oh God, we got to get him out of here. He's terrible. And that's what the basic film is about, is can the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the United States, can he have a regular life while being president? And that's what the whole movie's about. So it's a intense romantic comedy. It is a romantic comedy. There's a lot of comedy bits in it, but there's also a lot of situations, a lot of things you got to think about, because what would you think? What if Michelle Obama died, and what if President Obama started dating somebody? Would this whole thing be very similar to this? And to be honest, it's a sad take on our world, but I believe it would be. I believe that there would be people who would be leaping all over the fact that the president is dating somebody, especially a lobbyist of all things. Mm-hmm. So it gets all turned up, but it's a great film. It's a great inside look at the White House, as well as covering a lot of really interesting items to debate, and makes you think a little bit about how would I feel about this, how would I feel about the president dating somebody or possibly having sex, in the White House, with somebody? Because look, they're people. That's what you do. People who are in relationships. It might sound weird, but yes, we do have sex. I'm sorry, we do have sex with our spouses and loved ones. Okay, it's just the way it is. But you throw the president of the United States on that, and it's really interesting issue. So there's a lot of really interesting, there's a lot of funny jokes in this, a lot of really good jokes in it, a lot of thought-provoking things, a lot of look into the government hierarchy and how things work. Great cast. You got Michael Douglas, Annette Bening, Michael J. Fox, Richard Dreyfuss, Martin Sheen, Anna Deavara Smith, Samantha Mathis, David Paymer, Wendy Malick, John Mahoney, just Josh Molina. Just great cast. Great romantic comedy, but at the same time makes you think about certain issues and how you would react to them.
Right. Great choice. Yeah, I love that movie. My number 4 is from 1991, and that is JFK. I don't know if you ever saw JFK, but basically, the movie is part fact, and it's also mixed with the opinions of Jim Garrison and, of course, of Oliver Stone, who directed the film. It's concerning the events that surrounded the assassination of JFK on November 22nd, 1963, and what some believe was a proposed conspiracy. At the time, Jim Garrison was the New Orleans district attorney, and he wants to reopen the files and question the facts that the FBI had, put in the files concerning the assassination. By doing that, he puts him and his family in grave danger. And it brings a lot of political backlash from, politicians and the government in general. And basically, I won't give it away. It's a really great story. It's intense. Kevin Costner is in it. A ton of other great actors are in it too. I didn't write down who was in it, but basically, he uncovers confirms his suspicions that there's always more to a story than what the public is told, and that's sort of the gist of the whole movie. So that definitely had to be on my list, and pretty far up there in terms of being on my list as well.
For the longest time, it was number 10 on my list, and because we we came up with this idea about a month or so ago, and so I immediately wrote my list down. And then you go back to it, make some changes here and there, switch things around when you start thinking about it a little bit. For the longest time, it was on my number. It was my number 10, and I guess I just started thinking about it a little bit more, and I was like, maybe not. So I sort of dropped it off the top 10 list. I was going to make it an honorable mention, but then I found Wag the Dog, so I was like, I have to make that my one. So if I had to, it'd probably be my number 12. JFK would probably be my number 12. I love the movie. You and I did a show about conspiracies. We talked about the JFK conspiracy. I am on the belief that there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. And did this movie sway me in a little bit? Maybe a little bit, but I read the book that it actually was based on, and there is a lot of interesting things out there that don't quite make sense about the whole assassination of John F. Kennedy. And yes, it is the way Oliver Stone shoots it, though. It does, my government theme would have been, once again, government willing to kill somebody, possibly to advance their agenda, whatever. So, but the way Oliver Stone directs the film, and this is something you got to think about also. Everybody thinks about the subject matter. It's conspiracy. He's talking about conspiracy. You got to look at the film also as a movie, all right? See how Oliver Stone directs it. He intersperses actual news footage with reenactments of his actors who are playing the roles of the historical beings, mixes in colors and speeds up, slows down things. It is a visually stunning film. Yes, there are those moments where you need to have, actors in a room talking, which they have, but you also have to have these little bang, 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 boom, especially at the end when Costner is going through his monologue about how the assassination actually takes place, and you actually see what he's talking about. Instead of just having Kevin Costner stand there for 12 minutes, talk about it, this happens, you actually see, all the combination of the news footage and the footage that he shot, that Oliver Stone shot with the actors, and interspersed it so well done. It is such an amazing film from a director's standpoint. If you want to watch the film, if you do not agree with the subject matter, that's fine. But if you like art, if you like film as art, you have to see JFK, because the way Stone directs it, it is an amazing way to do it. And he intersperses a lot of gung-ho pro-America stuff with the darker side of America. He's able to juggle that. And he goes on to show that there are people in America who look at America as being broken. Then there are people who look at America as being the light and the way. So they've got, you intersperse those two in there. You've got the great scene where Costner actually goes to D.C. and he meets with Donald Sutherland's character X, and Donald Sutherland goes into more detail about the conspiracy, which is another one of my favorite scenes in film. And then you have him at the Arlington Cemetery, looking at the fallen soldier, and you're in D.C. You get that the whole feeling about D.C. and the government conspiracies and stuff like that, and how JFK was that shining light for a moment in America, and his death sent America on this dark path through the 60s that we've started to try to get out of, but is still going to be there. So JFK, as I said, was on my list for the longest time, but for whatever reason I sort of bumped it off. I'm not exactly sure why, but it just is one of those that it's another good choice on that. That was number 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My number 4 is the second of 2 films I discussed about Watergate. This one is done more in a serious way. This is All the President's Men. The government theme about this is, even ordinary people can bring down a government, and and it's basically based on the memoir written by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, who were the 2 Washington Post reporters who broke the story of Watergate. And basically, this film follows their path about, once again, like National Treasure, how they put all the clues together and are able to bring down the President of the United States due to this Watergate scandal. What I find interesting about this film is that the film came out in 1976, which is 2 years after Watergate happened. So Watergate was concluded and done with Nixon resigning and everything taken care of. So it was almost still very fresh in people's minds. And it is, and it's you could say now when you watch it now, you could almost say it looks like a period piece. Well, no, it's a contemporary story at that time. It was a story that was a big deal. It just so happens that the story took place about 2 or 3 years before the movie came out. So you've got the 1970s style apparel. They use the Washington Post as as a set. They actually get film at the Washington Post, and they mention characters who real people. Haldeman and G. Gordon Liddy and Ben Bradley and Woodward and Bernstein. They're all people who were involved with Watergate, and it is a wonderful film. Once again, Alan J. Pakula, who directed The Pelican Brief, which I talked about earlier, he directed this one also. And he is the type of director who, he hasn't directed a lot of films, but most of the ones that he's directed are all stellar, and this is another good one. The reason why I really, really like this one is the first time I ever saw it was in my high school journalism class. It was
cool.
End of summer. We had done our last issue of our high school newspaper. We had about 2 weeks left of the school year, so our advisor said, hey, let's watch All the President's Men. It puts newspaper reporters in a good light. It shows how they get the story and how there's nothing there for a while, but then they start chipping away, and before you know it, they have the biggest story of their lives. And because of what they did, they're able to change history. And they're just two ordinary guys, and much like we've talked about some of the other characters, they've, like in National Treasure, they fail. They have a lot of issues. They make mistakes. They're just regular people. There are so many times in this film where you know what happens. You know how the movie ends, but you're sitting there and you're afraid, like, are they going to be able to bust Nixon? Because there seems to be a lot of stuff going on that's making them look pretty bad, and it's not working. Are they going to get fired? Is it this time? Is it not going to work? Are they not going to be able to take down Nixon? And that's the sign of a great movie. Apollo 13 is another good example of that, where you know what happens. You know they make it back. But the way Ron Howard directs it is he builds the suspense so much that you're like, oh my God, are they not going to make it this time?
Right. I love when movies are able to do that. Love that.
Exactly, because you know what happens, and then you're so engaged in it that, oh my God, maybe it's not going to work this time. Maybe there's a fictional representation of it. But no, All the President's Men, great film. If you haven't seen it before, it's not your typical film. It is very slow. It is very plotting. It is very investigative. And it does have, it picks up a little bit when they start digging a little too deep and the government starts getting involved with it, sending people after them and bugging them and stuff like that. But it's a really, really good film. Really good film.
Sure. Well, my number 3 is Apollo 13. You just mentioned that. So, Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton, they play the 3 astronauts. Their names were Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert. Is that how you say it?
Swaggart.
Swaggart. Oh, I'm sorry. They must come up with a plan. They return to Earth after their mission to go to the moon. Kind of, gets into trouble. The blast off is fine. They're great. They're in space, but then this explosion happens on the space module, and they just don't know if they're going to get back. And what's cool about this is obviously it's a true story, and like you said, you do feel that tension. Is it going to happen? Are they going to make it? But what's cool about it is just that it's the test of the survival, the creativity of the scientists involved that come up with what they have to do to attempt the return to Earth, and the emotions of the astronauts, their family, and the fact that the nation then was like, everybody was on edge and watching every single night on TV. Before they had gone on this mission, I had read that sort of NASA stopped televising the launches because there was like this wane, and not that people lost interest, but there just wasn't as much interest anymore, and this sort of created this new boost for NASA. And like I said, every night they'd come from work or school or whatever, throw the TV on and want to know what's going on with the astronauts, and are they going to make it home, and are they home yet? And I mean, it's just again a film about like the nation coming together and praying and hoping and waiting to see what happens to these astronauts on this mission. So, definitely a very yay America, but in a non-snarky, like, we're really pulling for you kind of way.
I love the film. It's not on my list. I love the film, though, and you hit on the head. One of the reasons why I really love it is because ordinary guys doing their job are the ones who help them get home.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the crew is doing their own thing to help them, survive and keep their survival aspects of it. And there is no superhero is going to save the day, or there's just one
Right.
guy who says, "I'm going to come up with this idea, and this is going
Yeah.
to work, and I'm going to be the hero." No, it was a group of people who were doing their job. Their job was to make sure that these people were brought back safely, and they did it to a T. And
Yeah.
I think Ed Harris, his character, who's the flight director, he says it very well. There's a line in the film where one of the guys is saying, this could be the worst disaster in American history, and Ed Harris, without even blinking, turns and says, "I'm sorry, sir, but I believe it's going to be our brightest shining hour," or something like that. And it
Right.
turns out
Right.
that's
Right.
what it
Yeah.
is. And it's just he exudes such confidence that his team is going to be able to help save the day.
Mm.
And he could be wrong; he doesn't know. But at this point, is you cannot have doubts.
Right. You
It
can't
doesn't matter. You
mistake.
cannot
Yeah.
say, "You know what? There's no way we can save the day. They're dead. Let's just move on." No, you have to figure out a way to save them. Even if all seems lost, even if there is no way in hell they're going to escape, you have to keep fighting.
Yeah.
You have to keep doing it. If you don't try and they die, that's even worse than you tried your best and they die, because you actually tried to do something and it was beyond your control, but at least you weren't sitting around saying, "Oh, they're going to die." No, you actually said, "You know what? Let's think outside the box. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's just try things we never thought of before." It is a great film, great cast, wonderful, very patriotic, very pro-America, very yes, yay America, fantastic film. My number 3 is a really, really, really old one. Um, there have been a few years in motion picture history where every film that has come out is an absolute gem and a classic, and 1939 is one of those years. This film, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh yeah.
Old black and white film, so
Yes.
most people, young people probably have never even heard of this film. I know people who don't see movies past like the 80s, so there's a lot of really good stuff, in the past.
Yeah.
Especially 39. 39 was one of the greatest years of filmmaking. I think Casablanca, I think
Right.
Gone with the Wind, I think Wizard of Oz, I think Fantasia, I think Snow White. All these movies came out.
Amazing
Fantasia.
movies.
Fantasia
Yeah.
was 40, but Snow White. No, all these great films came out in 39. And this is another one. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a absolute classic. It is not, just declaring it classic. No, it is a classic. Frank Capra,
Mhm.
who's best known for directing It's a Wonderful Life, but that didn't come out till the 40s. So this is one of his early works. This is also one of the earliest films featuring Jimmy Stewart, who was also in It's a Wonderful Life. And it's black and white. Once again, it probably wouldn't stand the test of time, but you know what? It is an absolute classic. Jimmy Stewart plays a naive, good guy from some unnamed western state. I think the book that it's based on is The Man from Montana, so I think they don't actually say Montana in the movie,
Right.
but I think he's from one of the western states out there. He's a naive guy. He's never been never been to the big city before, and the governor of Montana is kind of crooked, and he needs to replace a senator who passed away from his state. And he's got advisors telling him, "You need to pick this guy because he's going to be good. He's going to get us, money and stuff like that." And it shows that the government is corrupt, even in 1939. You got to go with this guy because he'll be able to get us lots of money, and we'll be able to steal money and do all this stuff, and we'll be able to take control of things. And then the governor started thinking, like, you know what? No, let's go with this guy. No one knows who he is, and he's got a lot of folksy, good-timey appeal. And at the same time, he is so naive that if we really need to, we can coerce him into looking in our direction and backing us with these
Right.
criminal activities, and he won't even know what he's doing because he's so naive. So he goes to Washington, big fish in a small pond, now going to the big city, and now has no idea how to act. He's very awkward. He tries to strike up a relationship with his mentor's daughter. He has a mentor played by Claude Rains, who is also crooked, but becomes sort of like his mentor, teaching this is how you survive in Washington society. And Jimmy Stewart tries to start start a relationship with his daughter, with his mentor's daughter, but it doesn't quite work. The press is there, see how goofy and gullible he is, and they make him look like he's a stooge, you know.
Right.
So Claude Rains decides, you know what? Tell you what, this is what you need to do to make yourself, you know, look a little bit better. You need to come up with a bill. My secretary will help with the bill. His secretary is played by Jean Arthur. Her name is Clarissa, I believe, and they come up with a idea to set aside some land in this unnamed western state for a boys camp, because Jimmy Stewart's character was the head of like the Boy Scouts in his state. So he says, you know what, let's set aside some land out there, make it like a camping area for the boys to come and do the Boy Scout stuff and tent and fish and hunt and stuff like that. Of course, the land that he once procured for this is the land that the government is eyeing up for their dirty graft situation. So they end up making him look like that he's trying to destroy, you know, the Montana wilderness by creating this camp and stuff like that, and that he should be kicked out of office, stuff like that. So the government shows their true colors, and he is totally blindsided by this. His mentor is the one who turns the tide on him, and he's totally blindsided. He doesn't know what to do. He's being blamed for stuff that he doesn't understand, and he's got this issue that he doesn't understand. So the secretary, who he's become friends with, says, what you need to do is you need to go in, you need to filibuster so that we can try to figure out, save some time, try to figure out how we can clear your name and stuff like that. So then one of the most famous scenes in film history appears, where Jimmy Stewart's character, this naive freshman senator from Montana, goes into the Senate and filibusters for a full 24 hours, just talking about whatever, trying to prove his innocence, and one of the greatest acting scenes in history, and one of the best scenes. And the funny thing is, it doesn't work. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think, okay, the filibuster, it's going to make him, he's going to be the hero, everything's going to get better. No, actually it doesn't. He collapses from the exhaustion. The vote happens. He's getting ready to get kicked out, but then his mentor has a change of heart and ends up blurting out, it was all me, he's totally innocent, and then everything gets good. But it wasn't because of the filibuster. It was because Claude Rains had a change of heart. So, but still, regardless, this speech is why it's number 3 on my list, is because it talks about American ideals, how great America is, how the history is, the children are our future, basically, stuff like that. Just everything that you want to hear that's pro-government, pro-America is in this speech at the end. And Jimmy Stewart, once again, one of his early roles, shows how much of a great actor he is in this scene, that if anyone else did it, it probably wouldn't work. So Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is my number 3.
Nice. My number 2 is from 2012, and it is Argo. It was Ben Affleck's directed, and he also stars in it. And it takes place in 1979. The American embassy in Iran is invaded by Iranian revolutionaries, and several were taken, but 6 escape and end up hiding in the Canadian embassy's, or Canadian ambassador's residence. Excuse me. The CIA orders them to get out of the country, but with all the unrest, it isn't as simple as just getting on a plane and getting out. So Tony Mendez, who is an exfiltration expert, I can't talk right now, devises a plan. Let's create a phony Canadian sci-fi movie that needs to be shot in Iran because they need to have like a different type of landscape. And we're going to then take those 6 agents and smuggle them out as being part of the film crew. It's a true story. It's intense. It's funny, very, very well acted. And it just feel good, you know, and it's a definite victory for America. And that's why it is my number 2.
I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen it. It's one of those films that I want to see because of the historical significance of it, and being, as I said, a history guy, it's one of the things I want to see, just haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. It is, from what I've done a lot of reading on it, it's a true story. It is very pro-yay America. It is an actual incident that happened in American history, which was a bad time for Americans, so it's a way that the government tries to work to try to save the day. And so you've got those themes of patriotism and the government trying to save the day as well. As I said, one of those films that I want to see, It sounds interesting. It sounds like a great idea, and it's a lot different than a lot of people were expecting, I think, when they heard about it. So it's definitely going to be on my list to see there. And my number 2 is once again staying in the not quite as old as Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but this film's from 1972, and it is a musical, and the musical is 1776.
Ah.
Obvious reason why I have it on the list and so high up is because 1776, the government theme is, well, this is how we created America. 1776 is an actual Broadway musical. It hasn't been out for a while. They haven't done a new version of it in a while. It's probably due to have one because it actually is a really good musical. Okay. And that's the basic premise is it follows the Continental Congress and those last few days leading up to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and follows the trials and tribulations that the people who are there to ratify this declaration or help write this declaration, how they have to get all their issues worked out. And they have to agree that they are changing the course of history. Basically, writing this Declaration of Independence is basically saying to Europe, or rather to England, we don't want to be part of England anymore. We want to be our own country. And they know that that's going to cause England to go, hell no, and invade and attack them and start a war. And they know this, and they know that if we get caught, because we're the guys who signed it and the guys who helped write it, we're going to be executed and killed as traitors to England. Yep. So these guys, they were considered to be, I think there's 2 people from every one of the 13 colonies who come in and have their say. They discuss what they want to say in the Declaration, and you've got to make, leeways here and there. Like a good example is the delegation from South Carolina, who at that time was still pro-slavery, doesn't want anything in the Declaration of Independence saying that slavery is not has been abolished. They want slavery to continue, and that's the only way they're going to sign the Declaration. Though the people in the North want to say slavery is an abomination, let's get it out of there. The best place to do it is in this Declaration of Independence. So you've got that issue you've got to work out. Now, in the musical / story, I don't know if this actually happened or if it was just to make it, to expand the story a little bit. But the musical film follows John Adams and Ben Franklin, and as they're the ones who are very anti-slavery, let's get rid of England and make our own country. They're the ones who are spearheaded this idea, and they got their friend Thomas Jefferson, who's another big player in the film, to write it. Now, I don't know if this is true. I don't remember ever going over it in my history classes, but Thomas Jefferson apparently has writer's block in writing the Declaration of Independence, and he has to throw everything that is being talked about in the Continental Congress into this Declaration of Independence, and it has to be absolutely perfect, or it's not going to work. So it's a lot of pressure and a lot of stuff put on Thomas Jefferson's shoulders. And he's just been recently married, so he misses his wife, and stuff like that. And it's a musical, so you have musical numbers. There's about 12 musical numbers in it, and everybody misses their wives, and there's like romantic songs about them missing their wives, and then there's songs about how we've got to stand on our own feet against England, and yes, John Adams, the very first song is about how John Adams keeps talking about we need to do this now, we need to do this now, and he's telling everybody we need to do this now, and everybody's like, we understand, John, you got to simmer down a little bit. That's what the first song is about. Now, the movie, the main character is John Adams. He's played by William Daniels. Now, a lot of people might know who that is. If you don't, here's a few hints. One, William Daniels was the voice of Kit in Knight Rider.
Ah.
And more recently, in the 90s, he plays Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World.
Ah, yes.
he also had a stint in St. Elsewhere also. So if you know him from those things, so he plays John Adams. He's fantastic in it. I don't know a lot of these other actors. Howard Da Silva plays Ben Franklin. He plays him exactly how you expect, with the glasses and the little chubby belly and the very sardonic, sarcastic way Ben Franklin is. Ken Howard plays Thomas Jefferson, who's, what we've learned now, is a horny little cuss. He just got married, and the reason why I bring that up is because it comes to Franklin and Adams that one of the reasons why Thomas Jefferson might have this writer's block is because he's horny and he wants to be with his new bride. So they're able to bring his new bride to see him, and they go and they have their their sexual intercourse as in her, and then sure enough, boom, right there, Thomas Jefferson's like da 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 da. Their Declaration of Independence is done. But it's adding a romantic element to the actual
romantic.
Well, the historical. I mean,
hit it, quit it, right? The
But let's face it. To be honest, probably the real story of the Continental Congress, unless you're a big history buff, is probably boring as dirt.
Right.
It's a bunch of old white guys talking about how we want to declare our independence and we need to fill all this stuff. Great. It's a great musical. Blythe Danner's in it, also young Blythe Danner's in it, and the only other actor that I know of, John Cullum, is in it. He played Hollingvan Core in Northern Exposure. His role, he plays the South Carolina delegate who has one of the weirdest musical numbers talking about slavery. It is one of the creepiest jungle-infused musical numbers. But Cullum sings the hell out of it because he's a really good singer, and it's one of those really creepy songs, But if you've never seen it, check it out. It's long. It's about 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And Dawn and I, my wife Dawn and I, a couple 4th of July, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we got back from our celebration at my family's house, and we were just flipping on TV, and the fireworks were done over with. We flipped at Turner Classic Movies, and 1776 was on, and Dawn had never seen it. I'd seen it before. I was like, yeah, let's watch this. So we watched it, and we enjoyed it. I had just seen it like 2 or 3 years ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. It's a good fun musical film. If you like musicals, it's a good one.
Yeah.
And it's on my list because it's the creation of our government. So,
right, yeah. No,
in musical form.
Good way to do it. All right. Well, my number 1 is, unfortunately, I didn't write down the date of when this movie came out. It's an old Mel Gibson movie before Mel Gibson sort of lost his mind, Mel Gibson. It is The Patriot. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was 2000?
1999, 2000, somewhere there, because I was working at the radio station, and we did the sneak preview for it when
cool.
it came out.
Cool. Yeah, so, he's a farmer named Martin during the American Revolution, and his son, who's a soldier played by Heath Ledger, gets kidnapped by the British troops. So Martin gets a group of Carolina patriots together, and they go and they rise against the British troops, and his whole goal is to save his son and to get the British out of their territory. And I mean, it's just very Americana. It's the American Revolution, and I definitely wanted to put that in there. I thought it was a great movie at the time.
It's one of those films that you don't really see a lot of movies about the American Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
You see a ton about the Civil War. You see a ton about World War II. Revolutionary War, not so much, which is a shame because there is actually some pretty good stories, and the fact that they made a film about the Revolutionary War is good. And before Mel Gibson lost his mind, it was good. On top of that, it's directed by the guys who directed Independence Day. It was directed by Roland Emmerich. So there's that, and then you've got the oily Jason Isaacs, who played Malfoy's dad in the Harry Potter films, who's playing the evil, oily bad guy in this one. So it's a good film. It's a good American Revolution is one of those films that, as I said, with like 1776, an era where a lot of stuff is not really thought about too much, but it's the beginning of our government. The American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, 1776 was the warning shot. We wrote the Declaration of Independence. We've declared our independence. We've declared war basically on England. So England comes over and says, "Ha, we'll wipe these people off the map." Not so fast. So then you've got the Revolutionary War film and The Patriot, where you show that there was a lot more going on than expected. And it's a good choice, excellent choice on that. My number 1 film is probably going to sound a little bit familiar because I talked about a similar film not too long ago. But to be honest, I absolutely love this film to death. It is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. When we do our comfort food films again, we did one of those a couple months ago. If we do another one later this year, it'll be on the list again. 1993's Dave. You ever
Oh,
seen Dave?
yes. That's on my honorable mentions. Love Dave. Yes.
I last month you and I did our 30-year ago best movies from 30 years ago, 1985. Ghostbusters was both of our number ones. That
Mhm.
was directed by Ivan Reitman. Dave also directed by Ivan Reitman. So
Oh,
a good little connection there. So two
yeah.
months in a row, Ivan Reitman's gotten on the top in my list anyway.
Cool.
But Dave is just one of those films that I absolutely love. Everything
Yeah.
about this film works, and it is basically it's a contemporary updating kind of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but it's different enough that you
Yeah,
can't
sort of.
say, you can't say, oh, it's exactly like it. No, it's not.
Mhm.
The basic premise is Kevin Kline, who is phenomenal in this movie,
Yeah.
plays the dual role of Dave Kovic and President Bill Mitchell. President Bill Mitchell is this oily, creepy, bastard asshole president,
Yep.
who puts on the look that he's actually an everyman type of guy, but behind the scenes he's a big dick. He's a criminal. He's gotten involved in the saving and loan scandal, stuff like that. He's having an affair with one of his staff members. Um, so so he's not a nice person. Kevin Kline plays him exactly how he should, an oily bastard. And then you have Dave Kovic, who is the absolute opposite. And you have Kevin Kline doing that also. So if Kevin Kline is playing both a total bastard and one of the nicest, sweetest guys you've ever met. Dave Kovic is a regular guy. He runs a temp agency in Georgetown, and he just happens that he looks exactly like President Bill Mitchell. He's played by the same actor, but in this case, they're two different characters. He looks exactly like the president. So being being a guy who finds jobs for people, it doesn't pay a lot of money. Temp agency head of the temp agency doesn't pay a lot of money, so he needs to build up his money in other areas. So what he does is he sells himself out to local businesses and portrays the president. Like you see him in one of the early scenes in the film, you see him at a car dealership where the car dealership has been saying the president of the United States is going to be here, so come on, see him. And here's Kevin Kline's Dave Kovic coming in on a pig.
Yeah.
he looks like the president, but he looks different enough that there's people in the audience who's like, that's not really the president, is it? And there was a little girl, and the mother's like, I sure hope not, sweetheart, because he's in on a pig. He's got an American flag tie on, his hair's all tousled, he's got like a tweed jacket on, but he talks exactly like Bill Mitchell, and he's got the same similar looks to it, but he uses that as a way to bolster some money. So he goes to businesses, pretends to be the president. It's not hurting anybody, right?
Right. Right.
But of course, being in Washington, D.C., where the president happens to live, you're going to catch the eye of the Secret Service. Now, we see Ving Rhames' character. He plays Dwayne, who is a Social Security, a Secret Service, yes, thank you, Secret Service guy, who is on the lookout for lookalikes. Because there is a time, and I don't know how true this is, if it was just an invention for this film or if it actually happens, but there are times where they use a lookalike for the president. He doesn't say anything, but he walks down a hallway or goes into a secure location, and the real president comes out and does his speech, whatever. So it throws off the path of any potential assassins.
I think it happens in real life. I really do think they have lookalikes. Yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, it's not just necessarily to watch out for people attempting to assassinate the president, but also, people who are picketing, who do not like what he's doing, and they might throw tomatoes, or they picked at him and they don't want the president to see all these people calling him names and terrible stuff like that. And it puts him in danger. The Secret Service's job is to protect the president. So Dwayne comes in and says, hey, we need you for this job. All you got to do is walk down this hallway, wave to people, and that's all you need to do. So they cut his hair, they give him a suit, they make him look exactly like the president. The president comes in, looks him over and says, he's perfect, he's good. The president does his speech, and then he leaves, and then we see Dave leave in his place. But what we don't realize is that the president is actually still in the hotel where he had the speech, where he's having a liaison with his mistress. And unfortunately, in the middle of the sexual act, he ends up having a massive stroke. The president does.
Mm-hmm.
So the Secret Service happens to be outside the door. They know what's going on. So they find out what's going on. They call the chief of staff, who happens to be driving Dave back to the White House. And, or rather, no, the Ving Rhames' character is driving him back to his house. But then he gets a phone call from one of his Secret Service guys saying, hey, the president just had a massive stroke. The chief of staff wants you to take Dave to the White House. So Ving Rhames is going to say, okay, whatever they say, we're going to do. So they take Dave to the White House. And Dave doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's like, I thought I was going home. Did I do something wrong or whatever? So he goes into the White House, meets the chief of staff, played by Frank Langella. His name is Bob Alexander. And also the speechwriter, Kevin Dunn. Kevin Dunn plays the character Alan, who's a speechwriter for the president. They bring Dave in and tell him the president has had a massive stroke. And we kind of need to have somebody to be a liaison to show that America is safe. We want our enemies to believe that the president is still there. All his faculties are in place because the press is eventually going to find out the president had a stroke. You can't hide that. There's just nothing you can do. You can't really hide that. So they say, Dave, we're going to just need you to pretend to be the president for a little while longer. You'll actually be able to get to talk, do speeches, stuff like that. We'll tell you exactly what to say, how to act. We'll give you, everything you need to do. And then once the vice president gets back, you can skedaddle out and we'll be okay. That's exactly not what's going to happen because Bob Alexander, his chief of staff, is as much of a dick as Bill Mitchell is, and he wants to take over the presidency. And he knows that the only way to do that is to get rid of the vice president. Now, the vice president is played by Ben Kingsley, and he's Vice President Nance, and he's a good guy. He's a guy who's a lot like Dave is. But Bob Alexander doesn't want this guy to be president because Bill Mitchell and himself, they're these guys who are savings and loan scandals, stuff like that. They don't want a good guy to come in here and change everything. So they take all the savings and loan stuff that they almost got busted on, throw it on the vice president, so that Dave is going to have to fire Nance as vice president, and then we'll name Bob Alexander as the vice president, and then Bill Mitchell has another massive stroke, and then they'll bring the real Bill Mitchell, who happens to be in a coma right now. They'll bring him out, and then of course Bob Alexander now becomes acting president. So that's the premise of the movie. However, Dave being the good guy, he sees there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that he doesn't like, and he doesn't know about all the savings and loan stuff. He just knows what Bob and Alan are telling him, so he doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes. So he just plays along and does what he's supposed to do. And people begin to like him. He begins to show that Bill Mitchell is not this unapproachable guy that he appeared to be before this stroke. And it's easily identified as like, okay, he had a stroke and now he's happy to be alive. But it's a totally different person. And of course, the way Dave is, and he's able to get his influence in everybody, and everybody starts to like him. Eventually, the stuff with Bob is going to come out, and Bob doesn't like the idea that this guy could actually cause him a couple bit of stress. So he's got to figure out a way to get rid of him. So it's just a great film. Then you bring in Sigourney Weaver as the first lady, who is a tough as balls vice president, who doesn't take any crap, knows that her husband is having an affair with her, but stays with him because that's her job. And of course, once she finds out that Dave is Dave and not her husband, they fall in love with each other, which is kind of weird when you see somebody who looks exactly like your husband.
I'm going to fall in love with the nice version of you.
So basically, that's everything that Dave is about, and it is such a great movie.
It's a great movie.
It's filmed almost entirely in Washington, so you get lots of cameos from senators at the time, like Tip O'Neill is in that, Senator Paul Simon is in that, Dodd is in that, and then you've got a bunch of Washington insiders like what's his name, Ben Stein, and Helen Thomas, and then you also get cameos from Larry King and Oliver Stone, who we talked about earlier. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a cameo in this, and one of the best cameos is a guy that you've probably never heard of. His name is Jeff Tackett. He is a
Okay.
catcher for the Baltimore Orioles, or was a catcher
Okay.
for the Baltimore Orioles. Now, they were going to film a scene for Dave at Camden Yards, which is the baseball stadium down in Baltimore, where I live. I was going to be at that game.
Oh,
Something came up. I forget. I honestly I don't remember what came up. Something had come up, and I wasn't able to go to the game. So
oh,
we gave the tickets to my brother-in-law. So my brother-in-law was actually able to go to the game and actually see them film the scene for the movie, which
that's
is in the
cool.
film because Camden Yards had just come out in 92. 92 was his first year. So when they filmed it, it was in 92. It was the first year of Camden Yards. So it was a gorgeous stadium. And so they got Jeff Tackett, who was the catcher for the Orioles at the time, and they had Dave throw out the first pitch like the president does.
Oh,
And
cute.
it's a great little
Yeah.
scene, a montage scene, but it's a great little scene. It's actually filmed in Camden Yards, and my brother-in-law was at the stadium when they filmed it, so that was kind of
Cool.
cool.
Yeah.
But in general, the film is great. It's got a lot of Hollywood insiders. It's funny. It's got a lot of heart to it.
Yeah.
Charles Grodin is incredible in this. He plays Dave Kovic's best friend, Murray Blum, who's a what do you call it? The guy who balances books and stuff like that as a tax
He has
guy.
a perfect name too.
Murray Blum, yeah. And what's great, and yeah, that is a good one. And what's great is Dave asks him to come to the White House to balance the budget. And one of the funniest scenes in the film where this unknown tax guy is brought to the warehouse by the president and helps his friend Dave balance the budget that nobody else can balance. It is one of the greatest scenes. And then when he takes all the notes that Murray gave him and goes to his cabinet meeting and says, this is how we're going to balance the budget, it is a tour de force by Kevin Kline talking to these politicians about how we're going to change America, starting with this balanced budget. And it is such a great film. I cannot. I have to gush about this film entirely. It is a feel good, fun,
Yeah.
heartwarming, fantastic film.
I totally agree with you, and I love the ending. I won't give it away, but I just love how the whole ending plays out and how they resolve the whole issue. Yeah.
That last scene with Ving Rhames is just
Yeah.
one of the funniest sequences in the film.
Great.
It is an amazing film, and the fact that they were able to get actual people who work in the government at that time to
Yeah.
make cameo appearances in the film lends it some more credibility. Granted, it's not going to play well nowadays because it's people that are either retired or passed away already,
Yeah.
or no longer involved in the government, but still you get the feeling it is one of these old style political stories about government, and that is why it's my number one, because to me Dave is like the ultimate pinnacle government story, because it makes the government appear that there are dark aspects to it, but there's a lot of light in it, and you just need to find the right people to
Right.
bring it about. So
Great
I think
choice.
yep, good list. We still got a few more minutes real quick. Let's just cover some of the other things. Janica says her favorite government-themed film is the Stargate movies. Okay, I can see a Stargate movie. I can see that a little bit. I mean, the government has them investigate aliens, and you got Kurt Russell as the government guy, and James Spader's in there as well. Elway Cleaver says, curious to know where you all think Batman would be today if Keaton had stayed in the role. We'll talk about that probably some other time, maybe my comic book show or whatever. But it's a good question. And Elway also is asking, know any really great Area 51 films? There really isn't any great Area 51 films.
Independence
that I know
Day.
of. Independence Day, yeah. There's a good one right there. And then, real quick, Will Fish, a guy I follow on Twitter, he actually sent me his list of some of his government-themed films that he liked. There's only like 4 of them, so I'm going to just read them real quick once I get my Twitter feed going. So come on. It's dead air. This is called dead air, people. I know. Here we go. So, Will's list includes 2 that I already talked about. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Wag the Dog. He also throws Dr. Strangelove in there, which is also another, it's an old 60s film, but yeah, the classic line, there's no fighting in the war room, which is a great line, and it's a very satirical government movie. And then Brazil, which is actually more of a government in general, where it's not really an American government, but it's government taking over, and like a 1984 thing, taking over the world and making you do things you want to. It's a good choice for a a government bureaucracy type of film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the weirdest films you're ever going to see also, but it's a good one. So
Cool.
I think that is it. We did it within 2 hours, which is good. Yay! 11 films, 22 altogether, and fantastic. So we'll be back next month. We haven't come up with a theme yet, but we'll let you guys know what's going on. Hope you enjoyed the list show. Geri, thank you for coming in again, as always. Fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Great list. Next week is my Supernatural show with Daphne Dew. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with that. I might bring in our friend Lee, Midget Girl. She might be popping up in that as well. I'm going to see if I can get that together. And I think I might talk about, why people hoax UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings, stuff like that. So that might be something you might be interested in seeing.
Cool.
Then the following week, I will be on vacation. But if we have good Wi-Fi, I'm still going to do an episode of Dylan Knows.
You have to do it right on the beach.
On the beach, yep, right on the beach. It's going to be my Dylan Knows International with Bronwyn, and I've got the McGevnos, the John and Helena are going to be in there as well. Cool. And a couple topics we've already got on the board are Twin Peaks. We're going to talk about Twin Peaks. And also, this is one that I just came up with. We'll talk a little Sharknado because Sharknado 2 comes out at the end of the month. So it'll be our show will be the Sunday before Sharknado 2 comes out. So we'll do a little Sharknado talk there. And then beginning of August will be my comic book show with MJ Khan. So that's Dylan Knows for you. Thursday is Snarkalic Radio with Tony Solo, Kelly Toole, and Mike from Pagan. They've got special guest Greer Wilson, I think is her name. She's an actress, so that should be a good episode of that show. Cool. And Geri and I will be back sometime in August, second week of August. So probably I'm looking at maybe the 10th of August. So that's next time we'll be on for the show. So everybody have a pleasant Sunday. Yep. And Geri, it's time for you to go to the pool. So go enjoy summer. Go out there, enjoy the hot weather, and thanks for watching. See you later.
Thanks.